Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's session on social media strategy. I'm Annie, one of the Google Digital Skills trainers at this free Google Garage Digital Skills session. So in order to make sure you receive us correctly, you might want to quickly refresh the screen. If you press F2, that can iron out any of your problems of hearing and seeing us. And also, I'm not alone today. So if you want to join in the chat, you can join in with Benedict. He's also a digital skills coach, and you'll be able to recognize him by a blue spanner next to his name. Now, I've been doing marketing for most of my career, and I've also had my own online business. So hopefully I'll be able to bring some tips and ideas for you today. And as we go through, if you keep those questions going to Benedict, please do, but also there'll be some question breaks in between. Now, this is not a standalone session. We have many that are run at the Google Digital Garage and many around the topic of digital marketing as well. So if you're interested in that, go to g.co/digital garage, and I'm sure Benedict will kindly share that in the chat for you as well. There's also the link just below. Now, aside from the courses that you can see, we also have a Fundamentals of Digital Marketing certificate that you can attend. So this is all done remotely, online, and it's free of charge. It's in connection with the Open University. So if you are interested in this subject, please do dive in and have a look. So today we're going to look at the social media strategy, and we might know a lot about social media for our own use as individuals, but it's quite a different thing when we're using it for business. We like to break it down. So we're going to look at the social media strategy across 3 sections today. The first one is looking at how social media might be able to grow a business for us. And then we're going to look at a basic social media strategy, the building blocks we need to make that brought to life for our business and for our worlds to make it more effective. And finally, some free or low-cost tools to help execute this and make it useful in our social media tips as well. Now, there'll be lots of things that you want to talk about when it comes to social media. There's many platforms, newer ones being things like TikTok, that you might want to go into a bit more depth on. You may also want to look at how you can focus on one specific goal in growing, for example, your social media. Now, to do that, we will offer to small businesses and also charities free mentorship, which is one-to-one. So you just go to g.co/UK mentoring, and you'll get a digital garage coach that is a specialist in the area of interest that you'd like to share. So I think now Benedict might be sharing that also in the chat for you. I've just got a few hellos. Hussein, hi. And we've also got Harshita and Aditi and Segolin. Hello, all of you, and I hope I'm pronouncing your wonderful names correctly. So we're just going to start with how can social media help grow a business? Now, we really love interaction. If we have interaction, then we're able to answer the questions for you and really dig deep into how we can support you. So please do keep them coming. Anything related to the content today that you want answers to, do put into the chat. But let us know, what do you think social media can do to help drive a business? We know what it might do on a personal level, but how does that translate to the business world for us? We're going to look and explore at some ways to do exactly now that and see how it comes to life for you. Now, in the most recent times, I think most of us have spent an awful lot of time on social media. So put your virtual hands up if you're on social media in one way, shape or form. And I think we'll find that's pretty much all of us. Actually, we had 85% of us being on YouTube and 78% of us on Facebook. So the predominant platforms that people are on, the most popular ones, are those two. And so what's very interesting about this is people are wanting to engage. They're wanting to have motion, sound, communication, 2 ways interconnecting with each other. And that's really what social media should be about. Now, we might hear about LinkedIn, Twitter, but they're often less in the press, for example, and less popular than YouTube and Facebook. However, looking at the statistics, 44 million people are in the UK on social media. Now, I hazard a guess, because this was taken in 2018, that figure has now risen quite high. Most people we know probably in the pandemic were spending an awful lot of time on there. And in just before the pre-pandemic times, the average use was 1 hour and 54 minutes. Please share in the chat how much time you genuinely spend on social media, and be honest with yourselves about how much time you spend there, because it can add up. But it is a place that we literally live online. It's a place we meet people, we talk to people, we share ideas, we grow, we develop. So it is a very popular place to be. Just a few more hellos. So we've got Sigaline from Berlin, Robert from Watford, we've got Zoe from Hungary, we've got Great Dane from Cyprus, Zest from Turkey, Ilda from Greece. Welcome, everybody, and Gorkum from Poland. So it's great to see you all here and to have such an international presence again. So looking at how and why we might use social media for a business use, one of the things that is likely to pop up is the idea of growing sales. Ultimately, that is the holy grail. We would love to get sales through social media, but it's not our first point of call. However, what it can do to help us grow sales is reach new audiences. So as we know, up to 84% of the UK population is on social media in one platform or another. There might even be more than that now. So being on those platforms is an important place. Otherwise, it's a case of our competitors are on there, and if they are and we're not seen. It's almost like walking into a supermarket and seeing all the cereals but your brand so that no one can buy it. It's really important to get that opportunity to be seen and to reach new audiences. But remember, it's not always free on social media. I know we think of it as a free platform, but it takes time, resources, and effort to actually create that content and to do it right. So don't just throw ideas all around and spray and pray, but focus really on your goals. And we'll talk more about that later on. In terms of social media as well, one of the great things we can do is create new business opportunities. Now, particularly in the hospitality sector, you might have seen, for example, spas, holiday breaks, restaurants offering discounts and competitions to win some of these kind of events. And it catches your eye, it makes you aware of the brand, and it helps to get you engaging with them and interacting with them. And some of the best brands come up with ideas and competitions to involve you right from the very start in what your interests are. So as a consumer, you might be wanting to know more about a new brand or business. And if you help build that brand by, for example, giving ideas as to what recipes they might make, what opening hours, what they might do in terms of the music in their cafe, you're going to start engaging more with that brand. And if you want to do that as a business, you're going to more likely get ambassadors and people that are going to speak up for your brand and share it and feel a part of the tribe of your business. Because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build up a tribe of people that love what we do just as much. A few more hellos. Timithia from Nigeria, Red Reef, Katerina from Italy, Malia from Pakistan, Asan from Pakistan, Pratashia from India. Hi, everybody. And again, wonderful names. And I'm so sorry if I haven't got them exactly pronounced correctly. The other thing we can do in the social media world is we can look at targeting specific customer types. Now, we don't want to underestimate the value of this. If we can actually understand who we're talking to, their gender, their age, where they live, their life stage, their lifestyle, their interests, it means that we can make messages, we can make content that is really suitable and useful to them. Because every one of us is trying to solve a problem. And that's why we use brands, products, services. That's why we use business altogether. And if we're able to solve that problem by really understanding our users, it's going to make a massive difference to our business. So a lot of social media is also a gathering exercise in learning more about the wants and needs and desires of our customers. But we need to know which types of customer to target, and social media helps us to do that because it tells us who is involved. The other thing that we can do on social media is build relationships and networks. Now, I started by saying it's really important to create communication. It's two-way. So building up those relationships, those people that we want to connect with, can make such a difference to our business. If we know who we're talking to and what they're interested in, we can start to grow a business that really is speaking to the hearts and the minds of our consumers, but also to our networks. So there'll be people that want to talk about what we do, influencers out there, and we can find them in the social media space as well. So there's a lot of ways that we can help to generate more sales through social media. Aside from just generating new sales, we want to think about overall adding value as a brand. So, as a brand, as a business, what we're doing is we're actually creating a sense of value. So, we're answering a problem, but we're creating a sense of value. Why us? Why are we different? Why do we matter? So, one of the best things people can do is to focus on their customer service levels. Now, actually, customer service is becoming more and more and more important. And some of the best and biggest businesses out there have actually differentiated themselves and stepped apart from their competitors by just being absolutely wonderful at customer service. And in the digital world, in social media, people are expecting and demanding a far more responsive rate when it comes to customer service. So, for example, around 80% of people are expecting about 24 hours to get a response to what they're asking on social media, and actually about 40% in just an hour. So, whilst that sounds a lot, there are now chatbots and ways that we can tailor messages to make them know that we are listening, that we do want to attend to them, and we'll get back to them as soon as we can. And as long as people know that we care and that we're listening, that can make all the difference. But focusing in and drilling down on our customer service is a way to make our customers feel valued and make us stand out against the competitors. Starting two-way conversations. So I mentioned before that it's really nice to get our customers involved and getting them to ask questions and to answer questions as well to help build the brand together. So we might do that through doing polls, for example, on Twitter. We might ask questions or polls on Facebook and other channels. And by doing that, we can find out what their interests are. And I'll give you some nice examples of how that works really well a bit later on. But two-way conversations is important because we don't want to be the person that just talks and talks and talks at people. I think we know people like that in our lives, and we don't tend to listen after a while because all relationships, all communication does involve give and take. There's also an important thing to consider when we're looking at value for our brand, and that is how we can show a new side to our business. So there's lots of little touches we can do to share our human side with the business. And we are humans connecting with humans. So whether it's sharing our day and how we grew the business and being really open about it, whether it's the first time we wrap up that first sale, that first product that we're selling, and we're posting it out and we're showing them how much tender, loving care and attention has gone into it, or whether it's talking about how we started our business in a caravan, we came from nothing and we grew and we grew. All of these are ways of communicating and sharing our human side and that we're one of you. And if we understand what our customers are and what their interests are, we can start having those conversations with them as well that really make them aware of what our business stands for and what our business story is. Because aside from excellent customer service, the only other way to show a difference really against your competitors is often in the why of your business, the story of your business, how it came about and why it matters. Because if there's a story, there's a chance that there's a lot of people that want to hear it and can relate to it. And that's how you start to grow your business. And ultimately, what you want to do is find super fans and build up that community. The holy grail is when you get those people that love you so much that they'll write a blog about you, a review about you, they'll tell people about you. And that can start to build your business very quickly because ultimately people do trust other people more than they trust companies. If you think of yourself as a consumer, because we all are, would you trust more someone's genuine, passionate experience that they're sharing, for example, in a review over a camera, than from a company itself? And the chances are you're likely to say yes, alongside the majority of people. A few more people talking in the chat. Jeff from Kenya and Fond, I am not sure exactly where you're from, but hello to all of you. And thank you so much for engaging in the chat and keeping Benedict busy and for joining us today. So apart from adding value to the brand, what we can also do in social media is improve our marketing. So you've probably seen hashtags turn up in the search engines, and this is a way of seeing how we can be noted in search. Social tweets, for example, do come up in the search engines. You might use LinkedIn. That's a really good way of getting found as well in the search engines because that is ranked quite highly and comes up quite often in the search engines. Also, you might want to attract people to your site. So what we tend to forget about when we're using social media is that we're not just looking at what we're doing on the social media page, but also how we're growing our business outside of that. And I'll talk a bit more about that later on. But social media certainly is a signpost to getting them to know more about us as a business and perhaps come to our website. We also forget that actually the digital space gives us a rich hive of information like never before. In years gone by, traditional marketing, when I started my career, we wouldn't be able to get the metrics and the insights to the customers that we get today. Now we can have insights into who our customers are, their interests, their likes, their life stage, if they got married, if they got engaged. And all of these valuable insights are available within the business pages of most of your platforms out there. And this is how we start to learn more about our customers alongside Google Analytics, which is a useful tool that tells us exactly who came to our website, how they got there, how they behaved, and what they did. We have a session on Google Analytics as well, so called Get Started with Analytics. And if you go to g.co/digital garage, feel free to sign up to that. The other thing we want to do when we're doing social media in terms of marketing is to keep an eye on our competitors. All too often we can become just very focused on what we're doing and myopic about what people are doing around us. And there's such a gift in knowing what other people are doing. We can start to see what they've done well, what they've done badly, what's coming next, how they've grown their business, how many employees they've got. And all of that is really, really valuable stuff. So do keep an eye on your competitors and keep improving your marketing. So over the 6 years that I've been with the Google Digital Garage, there have been many, many questions that have come up along the way, but these are some of the more prominent ones when it comes to social media, and you might be able to relate to them as well. So what kind of updates should I post? It's quite difficult, isn't it, to continually come up with lots of new ideas for content. But one tool that I'd like to suggest to you is buzzsumo.com. That's BUZZSUMO.com. So hopefully you've got that down. Otherwise, I'm sure Benedict will share it in the chat. But buzzsumo.com. In there, it is a paid tool, but it does give you some generated ideas around people's use of content in the past and its success rate. So for example, it would give you a headline of a piece of content that worked well on Facebook and how many shares it got. What that can do is it can give you ideas for your own pieces of content, your own titles, and you might use the same title, but in a different piece of content, for example, a video, to bring it to life because you knew that that worked well in the past. So one way of creating content is using tools like BuzzSumo to find out what has worked well in the past. But other things that we can do is use HubSpot, and we can also use CoSchedule, lots of different places that will tell you information about creating content for social media. But when you want to create it for your own users, do keep an eye on what's worked well in the past using those analytics I spoke about earlier. So what are the posts that are driving people to my website? This is often something we forget. As I say, we focus just on the pages themselves, on those business pages, and we forget actually why we were doing it. It's a spray and pray. We put it out there. We like the content ourselves and see what will happen. But actually what we might want to do if we're trying to get people to be aware of our website is to see which of those are actually working for us. Because once we know what works well, we can amplify that message by paying to get people to see more of it, because there's only so much that people will see actually in your feed. So it's really important to look at which posts are driving people to your website. And again, you can find that in Google Analytics. The other thing you want to think about is when is the best time to engage with your audience? Because of course, people want to be able to engage with you as a brand or a business, but they'll be on at a certain time of the day. So finding out when they're on is going to save you a lot of heartache and waste of time in creating information that they never see because they're not on at that time of day. Now, some useful ways of finding about time of day is, again, looking at the insights of our pages, but also there's scheduling tools like Hootsuite. And Hootsuite will give us an opportunity to find out the best time of day, and it will flag up the best time of days for us when our users are on there. So it's a nice place all in one to see what's going on. And that means that we're not going to miss our users because we can see when they are most active. And that means we can focus on getting the content to them and serve to them in those times. The other thing we want to think about is who are our influential followers. When I had a business, I reached out to some really very big celebrities, or really rather big celebrities, not the biggest, but big enough. And actually, I shared with them some articles that had been written by my team and said, would it be okay if we share these to the public? And they were more than happy for us to do that. And in response, kindly, out of courtesy, we shared a link with them once we'd made it live about this article that was including them. They then shared that article link, and it created and generated thousands and thousands of visits to the website. So it's really worth reaching out to people who are influential, but also to see who already is influential. So going back to Google Analytics again, you'll be able to see in the part that says referrals, who has been referring people to your website. So what other websites are pointing to your website? And what I mean by that is if somebody's blogging about you and they like what they see and they've written something and they think you're brilliant, and then they link to you, that could be generating lots of traffic. And if you find out in Google Analytics, oh, lots of people are coming to my website because of that blog article, you'll know that they are a super fan or an influencer, and you might want to create a better relationship with them and maybe a business relationship with them in the future. So there's lots of things to consider when you are doing social media, but these are some of the key questions to consider first. So the next thing to consider here is that people don't have a huge attention span. I don't know about you, but there is a lot of information on social media. It comes, it goes really quickly. And really, we don't have a huge attention span anymore. In fact, it's expected that we only have about 8 seconds as a human attention span now. But on social media, it's only a couple of seconds. So think about what it will take to stop that thumb scrolling and get somebody arrested and interested in your content. So it does decrease rapidly on social media, and you need to think about making that content relevant. Otherwise, people will just see it as spam content they don't want. And that's the least thing we want, the last thing we want to achieve on social media. We want to create attentions and keep their attention while they're there. And by doing that, by learning about them, by knowing their interests, that's how we can achieve it. Remember, there is so much competition out there, but we just shouldn't be scared of that. We should see that as an opportunity to learn from our competitors, but also to know how we're going to focus on doing things differently. We've mentioned a few things, showing them the human side of our business and behind the scenes, our why, our story, or being really, really brilliant at customer service. But thinking about that competition out there, we need to think how we can make ourselves stand out. And if you want to write compelling headlines and great copy, we have a session on write for social media, or writing for social media. And again, if you go to g.co/digital garage, the link just below, you'll be able to attend that session, and that will give you a lot of food for thought on how you can write your content much more effectively for those people that have a small attention span in the social media space. And remember, as mentioned before, it's not always free to do social media. It takes the time, it takes the resources, it takes also the design, the content to use, and the footage to use potentially for your social media site. And it will only show to a small amount of family and friends. So outside of that, if you want people to know more about you, you're going to probably have to pay to reach those people. So it's not always free. And remember about PR disasters, they do exist. Once it's out there, it's out there. So consider what you're putting out there before just putting things on. Think about what that will say about you as a brand, as a person, as a business, and be aware of that as you go. So we're just going to have a quick break now for questions. looks like Benedict's been fantastic in the chat and is answering all your questions and is brilliant as usual. Do keep them coming. And again, if there is a question that seems useful to the whole group that is relevant to the content we're doing today and will help everybody, I'm sure Benedict will pass that on so that I can share that with you and answer it in the breaks. So without further ado, we'll move on now to building our social media strategy, which is what we hope to achieve in this session. And what I'd really love you to do is to be able to take a few building blocks from this together today so that you can start to build your own little strategy when you go back into the business. So there's a few building blocks to getting that strategy underway and to doing it effectively. And the first thing is to define your audience. So your audience, as mentioned, is kind of critical to everything we do. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But audience is where it's at, because if we don't know our audience, we can't tailor our message to them, and then we can't really reach them in a way that affects the heart and affects the mind and gets them engaged, which is what we want to do. In fact, engagement is the key metric to look at when we're looking at social media, because if we're getting people talking, sharing, and interacting, then we know they're interested in what we're doing, and that's really key. The next thing we need to think about is setting goals. Now, without a goal, it's like throwing a dart into space and having no bullseye. We really need a goal in order to know that what we're doing is focused, it's going to be exact, and we'll be able to measure if it's worked or not. And then we can repeat that behavior again in the future. So rather, again, that spray and pray that we're not fond of, which is just putting it out there and see what happens. If we start with a goal in mind, then we're able to create the content with that goal in our thoughts. The next thing to consider is our platforms. So there's many platforms out there, and we'll look at that in a minute. But really, we want to focus just on one or two. We've got to think, how much time do we have afforded for this? How many people? Is it just us? How much time per day? Because remember those response patterns. People are wanting us to be available, to respond, to be quick, and to be useful to them. So think about the platforms, first of all, that they're on. We don't want to waste time being on platforms they're not on, but also think about how much time we've got to afford to those platforms when we decide how many we might pick. Then we need to think about our social voice. So we will have a voice on social, and we'll talk a bit more about what that means and what that looks like for you as a brand as we go on. But we also do have a number of sessions that build upon that as well, and we'll talk about that again later. And finally, an important part of the whole thing is, what does success look like? So if we can't say what success looks like, we can't measure it. So we need to think, what do we want to achieve, and make that really specific for ourselves as well. So to begin with, the all-important part of your whole recipe in strategy is to get clear on who you're talking to, especially for social media and in marketing in general. So I invite you to take this home and to spend a good while looking into who your audience is. So first of all, you want to know who they are. Is it male, female? Is it a particular age group? Is it a particular location they're at? Is it that they're into particular interests? Once we know more about who they are, it gives us a much clearer idea in our minds as to how to write and create content for those people. Again, the Writing for Social Media course does help us look at what we call pen portraits, which is basically how we can write out the kind of ideal person that we'd like to speak to, the age, who they are, what they're interested in. And then when we've got that as a guide in our mind, it gets much easier to create content of value for those customers. What are they into? So what kind of likes do they have? From social media, we're able to pick up all this kind of information in a lot more depth, and it makes it more interesting, and it makes the content that we create far more palpable and enjoyable for our audiences. What or who influences them? By knowing this information as well, we're able to maybe create relationships with people that will matter to them, who might influence them further. And again, that time of day, knowing when they're online, is a useful tool for us, and we can find that out from our insights. But also we might ask people directly for this information, which we'll talk about in a moment. And which social media do they use? So social media, again, we need to know what platforms they're on in order to be able to engage with them on those platforms. We might assume for example, that our demographic might be older people, say silver surfers, or 50, 60 plus. We might decide that they are not going to be on social media. But if we make that assumption, we could be wrong. So, for example, in one of the first digital garages, a lady came in and she created makeup for older people, for the mature lady. And she felt that her demographic wouldn't likely be online, so, or particularly on social media. But she decided to, on the guidance of the garage, to give it a go on YouTube. And how wrong she was. She actually built an international business on the back of actually creating these demonstration makeup tutorials and sharing information on YouTube. So try not to make too many assumptions and actually ask your audience, but also to give things a try as well. So, as well as defining our audience, we need to find out who they are from them directly. So we've got those insights, we've got those analytics to get a bit of an idea, to look under the hood on who they are and what they're about. But one of the first things we want to do is to look at real people to understand their needs and interests. And we can do that if we've got, say, customer service people on the phone, people face to face, or we might even go onto the streets and speak to people that are prospects. But having existing customers is really useful to us because we can ask them questions and we can ask about their needs, their interests, their feelings about our product or service. Alongside that, we also need to think about how we can group them, because there'll be different kinds of groups. So, for example, if we sell vitamins, we might want to sell them mature vitamins to the mature people. We might want to sell sport vitamins to sports people. And we might want to sell, for example, skin vitamins to certain age group, let's say. But aside from that, we might also have, say, toys, children's toys. We might have the mums and we might have the grandparents, and they'll have different messaging, different interests. So by grouping them into these different lists and different segments, it helps us to organize our thoughts, our content, and our messaging around those particular groups. The other thing we can do, if we don't have a physical presence or a phone presence at this time, we can build an online survey and send that out through email, or have a pop-up, for example, when people come to our website. And this will give us more information about our customers so that we can see how our customers work, what their thoughts are, and how we can develop some ideas for them. So different online tools for that might be SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, and most of those are either free or have a free level to them. So aside from just doing that real world research that we want to do, we have those insights in those rich platforms that I talked about earlier. So Google Analytics is one of them. But also there's these different social media platforms, this is a screenshot here of the Google Marketing Platform, and it shows us the demographic report. So we can see who's male, female, who's been to our website, for example, or Facebook. We might see who, again, the age group, the gender, and then Twitter, the engagement there. So looking a little bit more at our insights, if we don't yet have the real world research, is useful to give us a bit of a guide as to at least who we're speaking to so that we can tailor it accordingly. Now, we've got that insight. We know a bit more about our customers. We know what their interests might be. We know how we're going to engage them. And we know more or less what they might look or behave like. But what are we doing it for? So we know who their customers are, and we know that we want to solve them a problem. But what, as a business, is that piece of content that we're creating going to generate? So each time we need to think about our goals. So it might be that we're using social media overall because we have a mission to be a better customer service agent for what we're delivering. So some people use, for example, Twitter, dedicated to just solving customer service problems. And you might choose to do the same. Some people pick a platform for a particular purpose, such as Twitter, customer service, Facebook, building up relationships and finding out information about their customers. We might want to grow brand awareness. So we might want to let people know we exist. So we might want to share our website. We might want to share who we are just visually, maybe our logo and some quotes. We might want to just get them engaged with our name and what we're about. We might also want to generate sales, as we started with the presentation. We want to look at how we can generate more interest, more sales through relationships, through building up those connections in the social media world, and by finding those people that are there with their interests intact. And also, we might want to get people and draw them into our website. So if we're looking at a goal, for example, like how many people are coming to our website, that is the statistic we're going to be interested in as a goal at the end. So focusing on people coming to the website will be a different goal to, for example, building brand awareness. So getting a lot of people interested and engaged on our social media page could be brand awareness, but getting people to our website is a little bit of a different goal. We also might use social media to just connect with those influencers who are going to be like our virtual salespeople. I mentioned earlier about when you connect with those influential people out there and get them to share your information, or they do it automatically because they love you so much, that's when you start to grow your business quite exponentially. The other thing is to focus just on one goal. It can be so attractive to want to do many goals at once, but just pick one for now and discover how that goal is actually going to help your business. So why am I doing this social media? Why do I want this social media page? What added value is it going to bring to my customers? And what problem is it going to solve for them? Then think about any barriers you might have. Will you have the resources to do that? Is it going to solve the problems that the customers want to have solved? And then think about what list of things you need to develop and get that goal in place and remove any barriers that could be there, and how you might make that work. So finally, you want to think about, are we talking to businesses or are we talking more to consumers? So there's a business to business or a business to consumer focus, and one will be more around lifestyle and one might be more about interests and jobs and titles. So you might want to test what works best, whether you want to be more formal, more informal, and whether you want to focus on the lifestyle. But have a look at what your business is focusing on, and each channel will require a different investment. But if you're looking at business, you're probably going to be more interested in the likes of LinkedIn and Facebook, for example. And if you're interested in lifestyle, it might be Instagram and TikTok. But it really does depend on your customer, your product, your service. So we won't be able to answer the right channels for you at this point. It's more about where are your audience. But you might want to think about the kind of way you're going to celebrate your brand and share your content. And it might be through a certain lifestyle focus or a business focus. And you want to pick out the kind of platforms that they're going to best represent on as well, so that you can build the strategies for it. Now, each platform will have a different strategy. What you don't want to do is create all the same content and post it on multiple different platforms, because you have different users there, different reasons for being there, different mindsets when they're on those platforms. And you want to speak to the people in the language that they have and the mindset they're in when they're on those specific platforms. So we're now going to have a very quick top level view of some of the main platforms that are out there. But if you want to go into any depth on any of the platforms, or again, if you want to have a tailored strategy for a particular goal, do go to g.co/UK mentoring and get a one-to-one where you can go into more depth and have a session with somebody. But to begin with, let's look at Twitter. So Twitter is a quick fire tool. It's really good for real-time news, PR, reaching out to people and keeping connected. So it's real-time information. But Dollar Shave Club is a great example of how Twitter can be used to harvest and hive lots of useful information from its public, from its customers and its prospects. So it reached out to find out how often people shaved, for example, so that they could see if there would be a subscription service that might work for them. They also found out that people preferred, their customers or prospects preferred to have a more basic razor than all these singing and dancing sort of Gillette versions of this world. And on the back of that, they created a really successful brand, and they also understood the voice, the tone of voice of their customers. So the Dollar Shave Club is a wonderful example of how Twitter can be used well for creating questions, polls, engaging. But remember, when you use Twitter, you want to really make the most of the real estate. So get you're real clear on what your brand is about, what you do differently to anyone else, and get that in the header in your profile and get the image to mirror that as well, to show that. And engage with people. It's not a one-way tool. Do retweet and engage related content that your users might also be interested in. Another platform that you'll all be aware of, and 84% of us use, is Facebook. And that's often used as a shop window. And the important thing is to include what we call call to action. So it's inviting your users or your prospects to take action, to do something by being on your page. Now, here we've got an example of a company called Proper Tasty. And what they've got is some fast, indulgent, quick recipes. And they've used some basic popular ingredients so that it helped make the videos go viral. Because if people can access that, they can get engaged and involved with your brand, and they can start to do things with you. And they also started to see a trend for videos and how it was working and tapping into content and friends on Facebook. Now, if you're interested in YouTube, we've got a session on YouTube Your Brand, and you might want to sit through that session to find out more about how you can expand your business with YouTube. And YouTube is a very effective platform for doing that, which we'll talk about in a minute. But don't forget, some of the basic housekeeping for Facebook is ensuring that you link to your website so that people can find you, adding those all important opening hours, contact details, because people will go there to find out more about you. And do be responsive. Remember those statistics about how quickly people want you to respond and to message them. But also use video. People want interaction. They want it to be brought to life as much as possible. The next is Instagram. So Instagram is a brilliant place for influencers and for reaching out to people that we want to get connected with. Go easy on the hashtags. It keeps changing how many we should have. Maybe speak to your expert when you have your one-to-one. But don't go overboard with it. Make it really focused and valuable. But keep a consistent image. As we can see here, Letterfolk has created one voice, one look. All the visuals can be seen as being related to each other. We'll know who Letterbox is, Letterfolk is every time it comes up. And that's the kind of high quality, consistent colorings you want to evoke as well. LinkedIn, as I said, this appears really well for search engines because it shows that we have a professional presence and a company established. L'Oreal loves to use it to engage with potential employees, existing employees, and to show people the internal communications of their business. They post leadership, thought pieces, and it's very good for business to business. And it also does interviews with their employees. So we start to see a behind the scenes, a bit of a real life part of L'Oreal, which is really nice as well. So it's good for search engine optimization. You can build brand advocates on the back of it, and you can start to create a showcase page of your brand and what you're doing in your business so that people can follow. Now, I mentioned YouTube. It's actually the second biggest search engine now in the world after Google. And this is used more than television for videos. There's absolutely lots of videos that are used every day. And they've launched a while ago a Director for Business app where in 20 minutes you can create a simple video using a series of templates. And it's evolved further still. So do see YouTube Your Brand for more information on YouTube. It's a very good platform. So we talked about social voice very briefly at the beginning. Social voice is about the rules that you want to create for how you can communicate on social media. It's about how you're going to come across, your tone of voice, how it would speak if it was a person, how it would look, how it would feel. We actually have a session that talks more about building your personal brand. You might want to sit that session to understand more about tone of voice in general. But when it comes to social voice, it's how are we going to be represented on social media? What are we going to be known for? Of course, like any person, we might have variations on our tone, but generally speaking, a person is known for being more serious or more funny overall. So think about what you want to be known for. And also create a document right from now, right from the beginning on do's and don'ts. It's never too early to have a document that says what you do and don't want to be known for on social media. This is going to help protect you from a PR disaster. It's going to help when you expand your business and you want to bring new people into it. And it's going to help you remember what you're there to do in the social media space. Within that document, you might want to include the fonts, the logos, the size of logo you want to use, the colors, so that it's consistent. You might also want to talk about the kind of colours that you're going to be using so that everybody's on the same page and we all know where we're coming from. So that Letterfolk, as they've shown, building that consistency comes across the customers, and every time they see something about you, they know it's yours. So have a think now about, in terms of social voice, what kind of voice you want to present online. Now, it's interesting because some people might think accountancy stuffing, boring, serious, but actually I've seen the examples of modern accountants switching that on its head and making it fun and more informal. And that has actually taken down the lack of trust that was in the industry, it's built up more rapport, and it's started to develop and build a brand. So you don't always have to follow what everyone before you has done, but it's nice to build up a clear tone of voice that people know what to expect when they see you and they know who you are. And so think, are you going to be friendly, or are you going to be more provocative? Are you going to be fun or serious? So for example, if you're dealing with money, if you're a bank, you may want to be a bit more serious. But if you're working, say, for a fashion brand, you might want to be more casual or more fun, for example. So you don't have to have one set tone of voice all the time, but you do have to be consistent on who you are. So they have to have an idea about what to expect when they're coming to see you. Now, this is a really lovely example. This case study, some of you might remember, it's called This Girl Can campaign. And this campaign generated 16 million women exercising. So what they discovered were that women were nervous to exercise, and the internal thoughts were that they didn't look good enough when they were exercising, and it stopped them from taking part. So you could probably guess which platforms this worked well on. But platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, they went to where their users were and they engaged with them so that they could build that tone of voice with their public who understood what it was like to feel that way. And they felt that someone understood them. And that because of that, they built up this community where they could feel more comfortable in exercising and getting back out there and doing what they love. So all of these kind of things are from the insights and the understanding of our customer and our audience first. So the next thing is thinking about our success. So we can get so distracted by the wrong numbers. Very early in the social media years, people were very focused on what we call vanity metrics. So how many people liked our page? And back then, that might have been a useful metric more than it is today. But actually, we've got to remember that social media is about engagement. So people are now moving, for example, in Facebook, more from the page to groups, and they're focusing more on the metrics of engagement because people want to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and they want to build that tribe. So if you think of your business as building a tribe of followers, of like-minded followers and interest, that is what you want to do on social media. You want to create that community, that buzz, that interest. So often you might focus more on your engagement figures than just your overall number of followers. Whilst followers is nice, it can distract you from what you're there to do. So think about how many people are talking about you online. You might also want to see what people are saying about you online. So first of all, you might get that through your customer service team. You might see it on your results in the messages that you get through social media. And you might want to look at, as you grow, at social media listening tools. So there's a few tools out there that I'd recommend for small businesses that are paid for services, but are useful for this kind of thing. And that's called Sprout Social. Now, Sprout Social helps us to look at the metrics of how we're performing in lots of aspects of social media, but it also does a discovery section, which is where we're listening to what people are saying about our brand, our services, our products. And that will tell us how satisfied customers are. And it will tell us over time if it's improving or not. So we might want to look at customer service as our main focus for social media and how many calls we're answering versus from before, how much better representation we're getting online in terms of reviews, what people are saying about us in our social listening, and also what people are saying in our messages as well. The final thing is looking at that brand awareness and mentions, as I mentioned before, and all of that can also be found on tools such as Sprout Social. There are other tools, but they're more for the bigger businesses as we grow and spend more. So as mentioned, it's not always free to create content, but when we create content, we need to think about how we can create that content to expand to those that are interested in it and grow the business. So we can do that by finding the pieces of content that work really well for us, the ones that are getting people to the goals that we have set, and we're getting the results from those goals. And once that's happening, we might decide to amplify that message, to spread it wider, to let more people know about us. And we can do that through paying, through advertising, and getting people to find out about our post. And this is important across all platforms. There's no platform now that you can just put things on and everybody sees it. I think there's only a very, very small amount of people that will see your content, and they're the ones that are very actively engaged. So as I mentioned before, getting them engaged is a way of getting them to see your content. So the payoff is so much more important over the long run to get people that are engaged than just people for the sake of numbers. So figure out what works best for you, and then look at the kind of content you want to spread across platforms. And if your goal is sales, you do need to look at analytics and see how many sales are actually coming through to fruition from your social media efforts. So do have a look at that and how that is growing your business, because that will guide you as to whether you want to pay for those pieces of content, especially more if you're wanting to grow your sales. Now, we've talked quite a bit about the strategy, and we're just going to have a quick recap now. First of all, please spend that time this evening on looking at your audience and go out to survey, speak to, find your audience and what their interests are and what platforms they're on, etc., so that you can tailor your content accordingly and know who you're speaking to. Think about the goals you want for the business. It's good to have a mission per platform. If you've picked just 2 platforms, say Facebook and Twitter, do you want to use one for customer service, for example? Do you want to use one for getting to know more about your customers? It's a broad goal, it's a big goal, but thinking about your goals overall and then narrowing in on each piece of content what you want to achieve from each of those bits. Then look at the social platforms you're going to focus on. That ultimately will come out of the research of your audience and what their interests are, and focus on there. And remember, don't create the same content for all platforms. It will be different content depending on who is on each platform. Tone of voice. Are we going to be serious? Are we going to be funny, cheeky? Are we going to be a bit provocative? And what is success going to look like for us? Are we going to be looking at our customer service results, our sales? What is our definition of success? So just looking now for questions, it looks like, my goodness, as always, Benedict is doing a sterling job there in the chat. Thank you, Benedict. And yeah, answering all your questions for you. So if you do have any questions that you want to go a bit more deep dive into any platforms or any specific goals, again, g.co/UK mentoring will help support that for you. Now, in the final minutes that we have together, we're going to talk about tools and best practice. So some of these are just the cheaper tools, the best practice tools that we recommend to use to start building up that social media presence for you. But to start with, we mentioned about content. What kind of content should we share? Now, don't forget to go for the Writing for Social Media course, because that will help support the kind of headlines, this kind of content to grab people's attention. But we also need to think about the kind of themes, the kind of content we want to create. So, of course, if these people are following us and engaging with us, they're going to want to know about our new products, and it's great to make announcements about those. But also, those behind the scenes little bits are really useful. So I mentioned accountancy earlier. So a lady I know very well created a business about accountancy and turned it on its head. And she went out and started to record her journey because she realized that her audience, her customers, were also starting their journey as a business. So she thought they'd relate very well to her journey. And she talked about the highs, the lows, the ins and the outs of running a business, and became a real person to her followers. And she shared those on a live video cam regularly, almost daily, behind the scenes. So that might not be for you, but if it is for you, it can be a way of sharing who you are. Other things can be sharing your story. So again, think about the kind of behind the scenes series that you want to create for your audiences. And the YouTube Your Brand session will help you with that as well. The other thing to consider is not everybody knows what they can do with your product or service. So products have lots of uses and ways that we can use them. So we might want to showcase how those products can be used in action. Videos are a great way to demonstrate how-tos. So we might have a scarf and show a million ways that we can use it, or a dress and different ways to wear it. There's lots of things we can do to bring our product to life and show it in different situations for different reasons. And that might expand our customer base as well. We also might want to think about recurring content. So that could be built around themes. What is happening in the calendar of the year that we can all relate to and we can build in to build that human side up of our business, or to click into, piggyback on what's happening in the bigger world as regards things that relate to our business. So putting in the content into our calendar, whether it's festivals, events that are coming up that we can talk about that relate to perhaps what we do, are going to be useful things. Operational stuff. This has been particularly important since COVID. We want to know when things are open, what hours, when we close, and we need to make sure that's updated regularly so that people can be aware of that we're around. Otherwise, they may doubt our reputation and how and what we exist for. And we also might want to put in there, for example, attributes like if we're a cafe, do we have Wi-Fi, etc. So lots of things we might want to consider in terms of content there. And responses, remember that engagement with the customer is so key. And on the Writing for Social Media course, it also goes through how to deal with negative responses. So that's a really useful thing to engage with and to watch. But again, just being responsive, setting up those automated messages, answering people as quickly as you can within a time period that you commit to as a brand, as a business, is a great way forward. Now, people want to share experiences. You, as a customer, may do the same. You might want to, if you've had a good experience, shout about it, let the world know about it. And that's very much what it's like in the social media space now. It creates loyal social advocates by having very exciting experiences or different experiences for our customers. So there might be things like, do you remember Coca-Cola having your name on? I bet you took a picture of it and shared it with people. So things like that you might want to consider as a brand. How can you do something a bit different? Maybe seasonal cups like they had at Starbucks. What kind of things can you do to generate an experience that's worth sharing with other people? If you're prepared to share it, chances are your audiences are as well. And make it really timely and authentic. What's going on in the wider world that you can connect with that will make people want to share it at that particular time? For example, it might be Valentine's Day and you do something a bit different, maybe a big event around it, or a special product launch around Valentine's. Whatever it may be, try and tag it into a bigger event and also make it worth sharing and attractive to do so. Now, another tip for sharing content. Before I knew about this tool, I spent an awful lot of money on designers. I still use designers now, but not to the same extent, and certainly not so much for social media. But Canva.com is a great way of creating quick, simple social media posts. Remember, it's a resource that we don't want to spend too much money in. So it's the place that we really want to be using low-cost design tools. And Canva has got a charge per year, but there is a free use to it as well. And it shows you all the sizes of already pre-created templates of social media so that you can just upload your logo, put in your imagery, put in your quotes and go. So that's really great for graphics. Also, everybody seems to be very keen on grammar. Well, not everybody, but particularly certain industries, professions, they care about grammar. So if you are struggling with grammar, there's a tool called Grammarly that you might want to try. And I think Benedict might add into the chat for you. And Grammarly will help you to see what works well and what's not going quite well, and show you where you need to improve in terms of your grammar. And finally, if you want to manage those social media accounts, I did mention earlier about Hootsuite, which is basically an application for all those social media channels and bringing it all together nice and neatly for you. So what I really would love you to do is to commit this for yourself when you get home. As well as doing that audience research, I want you then to look at setting a goal for your strategy. What will that goal be? Define that audience, that tone of voice for your audience and the content that you want to create. Maybe create a content calendar. Again, have a mentoring session to help you do that. And then focus on the platforms where your audience are and where you want to focus. So No questions. Thank you so much, Benedict. I'm sure you will agree. He's been a fantastic coach there in the chat. So your next steps, I've mentioned a few. YouTube your brand, write for social media, join that fundamentals course, and build your personal brand online. All of those different courses and sessions are worth attending at ge.co/digital garage. But also get that mentoring in if you want some more personalized approach, one-to-one, and go in depth at g.co/UK mentoring. All that's left to say is please do a hashtag digital garage if you've had a great session, and let us know your feedback at goo.gov/digital garage feedback. I've been Annie, we've had Benedict in the chat, and it's been wonderful talking to you all from all around the world today. And thank you so much for engaging with us, and hope to see you in one of our future sessions soon. Bye-bye for now.